Hello to all of you, wherever you are, and however you managed to find me. My name is Ian Hamilton. I'm the author of the Ava Lee novels, 13 so far and counting. The 14th, actually, the ebook will be out in May, end of May. I have the cover of it here. I just finished editing it, actually. It's called, The Diamond Queen of Singapore. May 26th is an ebook, and then in August as a paperback. My books are now being published in 8 languages in more than 20 countries. It's been a really satisfying series of events that, for me, that led to all of this. One of the big thrills of my life was when BBC Culture named me one of the 10 authors from the last 30 years that you should have in your bookshelf in terms of mystery thriller writers. I'm doing this today in concert with the Oakville Public Library, and I'd like to thank them for thinking of it and helping to organize it. One of the things that they did was ask their members for questions that they could ask me, and they've sent me 8. And I'm going to try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. And the first question is, in this time of lockdown and shutdowns, how am I keeping busy? Well, as I said, I just finished editing The Diamond Queen, and it's a long book, that one. And I'm in the process of writing the 3rd Uncle novel. I've got 2 chapters to go. Its title is Fortune, and hopefully it's as good as the first 2. So that is what's keeping me busy. And after I finish Uncle, I'm going on to the next Ava Lee, so it won't be stopping. The second question is, what instigates the writing process for you, for myself? Do I start with a character? Do I start with plot? Do I start with setting? And the answer is unfortunately a bit complicated. The first book, Water Rat of One Chai, the first Ava Lee novel, came to me from absolutely nowhere. I was just 2 days out of hospital after some surgery, and I was highly medicated. And I decided I'd see if I could write a novel. I'd always wanted to do that, and I saw this as an opportunity, and that was in 2009, and I was 63 years old at the time. And so I sat down, and the name Ava Lee came to me from absolutely nowhere, and one sentence, and that sentence was that she didn't know where the call originated, but she was sure it was somewhere in Asia, and that the caller was either ignorant of the time difference or too desperate to care. And that that started it, and I just started to write. And I guess later, it became obvious of sort of channeling my work experience in Asia, my love of Chinese culture, Chinese food, my respect for women, and all of that sort of came together in the book. So that came from nowhere, but as I was writing that book, all of a sudden I had a plot idea for a second book. And then a 3rd book. So they start, after I created my character, the plot sort of came from nowhere and everywhere. However, I've written 2 standalone novels, one called Bonnie Jack and the other called Curacao. And I use the trigger for those books. In the case of Bonnie Jack, it was my father's early life. And then I changed his character substantially in the book, but the key moments in this man's life came from my father's, and that triggered the book. And the other book, Curacao, also came from a story, 2 stories actually. One about people we knew who went to New Zealand, lived on a farm, or went to look after a farm for someone, and a series of unfortunate incidents happened. And the other story that I sort of leaned on came from a friend of mine named John Patterson, who at one point in time owned 2 parrots and in Bangkok. And again, there were some events that took place with the parrots. So I used both of those to form the book. In my uncle books, which is more interesting, so I'm writing the third. The first book was set in 1959. I was able to make use of things like Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward as plot mechanisms. The second book, it was Deng Xiaoping opening up the special economic zones in China, which led to all the economic growth they have experienced since then. And I actually was able to build Deng into the plot. So at one point in time, my character, Uncle, meets Deng. And I did the same thing in the third book, which I'm writing now, where I put another character, Tao Siju, who was the Minister of Public Security for China, and I built him into the plot. So the plot ideas come from just about anywhere, I guess, and the characters is the same. The next question is, was Uncle's character inspired by someone in real life? No, it wasn't. But he's someone I would like to be. He is calm on the surface. He's in control. He's thoughtful. He's highly respected, simply because of his character, not because of the fact that he may have money or not money, or he can do this or can do that. I mean, he seems to have this calming, steadying influence in everyone around him, and that's something that I've always wanted to be able to act like, and usually fail. Question 4 is, what am I reading these days? And the answer to that is basically the New Yorker magazine and the Economist magazine. When I started to write fiction, I stopped reading it, simply because I had the voice in my head and my own sense of pacing and timing, and I felt I was highly susceptible to other people's style, and so I decided to avoid reading fiction. But I still read a lot of nonfiction, history, biographies, things like that. And I'm trying to remember the last book I read. It could have been one by a man named Norman Lewis, who I adore. He writes memoirs, and he wrote a book called The World, which I enjoyed very much. Question number 5, who is the biggest influence on my writing? There have been so many influences, but 2 that really come to mind. One is Richard Stark. And he wrote a series, I think 20 or 21 novels, about a character whose name is Parker. You actually never know his first name, but the writing, like the name, is stark. It's to the point. His books are all really plot-driven. But Parker's character is sort of unchanging from book to book to book, and he's not a nice person. And if you keep waiting for him to change, you're going to be disappointed. But he's a brilliant character, and the books are brilliantly written, and I like them for their brevity and his ability to get a story across without going on and on and on. The other influence, I would think, is Patrick O'Brian, who wrote, again, 15 or 16 book series about Jack Aubrey, who was a sailor in the British Army during the Napoleonic Wars. And again, the books are absolutely brilliant. And they trace Aubrey's career from the time he was a midshipman to the time he was an admiral in the last book of the series. And his character keeps developing and growing and changing through the books. And that's something that I really admired, because one of the great traps you can fall into as someone writing a series is to keep writing the same book over and over again. And I decided, I think early on, not to do that. and I've worked very hard at changing my characters. Some leave, some new characters are added, and Ava's character continues to evolve and change, and she becomes, in the first books, she's a bit rougher around the edges. She's certainly more physically intimidating, and then gradually, as she gets older, more comfortable in her skin, you see her maturity start to take place. And again, I think O'Brien was sort of the inspiration for taking that kind of approach. Next question is, what are the advantages of being older when you start writing? Well, I guess the main obvious advantages is you've seen a lot and gone through a lot. But those two things I don't think make you a writer, particularly if you haven't been observant as you've gone through all this stuff or taken notice of it. I like to think that I was always a curious person, and so I spent 20 years traveling and working in Asia, and as I was doing that, I was always reading and trying to understand the cultures I was working in and the people I was working with, and I think that comes across in the books. But again, I lived it, I went through it. I also was in business, and I used some of the business experiences I had as plot lines, which helps. So there is definitely something to having lived and gone through a lot in terms of being able to put the book together. Next question is in my books, the books are all set in different countries, different places, all of whom I visited, and I write about them. I write about food and culture quite a bit. The places I really work hard at not writing travelogues. I don't want to write travelogue. I want to give you a taste of a place. I want to give you something different, a hint of color about a place. So I tend to pick out things that stuck out to me, things that could be unusual, For example, when I was writing with Guyana, when I was there, the roads were just covered in potholes, deep crevice potholes, chasms, and the locals talked about it all the time, and no one ever fixed a pothole. And so in the book, the potholes become part of the things you see in Guyana, as was the fact that Georgetown, the capital, only had enough electric power for half of the city. So they alternated from one side to the other from day to day. So when you were planning to go out for a meal, you planned to go to a restaurant that had power. So that was all, again, that's built into the book. In terms of researching, for some reason, I remember all kinds of things. So when I'm writing about places, most of it's from memory. I do go back sometimes just to confirm that my memory is accurate. And when I write about food, when I write about hotels, I typically write about real places, okay, and again, the real menu, etc. In terms of research, I brought my notepad up to show you, because it's a mess of a thing. So that is a typical page in my notebook, where I put down names and little things I want to remember or whatever. So there's another page that will actually form part of the Uncle book that I'm writing. but that's, again, from a research viewpoint, that's mainly it's just confirming things that I am remembering things accurately. And the process has changed from Ava Lee to Uncle. Because again, with Uncle, I'm writing about real things. Like the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, the opening of the special economic zones, China, the handover from the British to the Chinese. It forms a large part of the plot in the third book. It also fascinates me because, again, using real characters and real situations, with the demonstrations in Hong Kong over the last year, it was widely reported that the Chinese government was employing triads to help break up the demonstrations. And I plant the seed for that kind of action in the third Uncle book, where Uncle and the Chinese government, the triads and the Chinese government, reach an accommodation. And as far-fetched as that may seem, I actually found a quote from this Tao Sishu, who was the Minister of Public Security for the People's Republic of China. And in 1995, 2 years before the handover, he said, "Triads are not always gangsters. As long as they are patriots concerned with maintaining prosperity, as long as they are true patriots concerned with maintaining prosperity in Hong Kong, we should respect them." And that was sort of the olive branch being offered to the triads by him. The last question I have here is, who do I envision playing Ava Lee? Well, the books are in development for television. It's a sort of a never-ending process, but we're getting there, I think. Scripts are written, outlines are done. I know that the producers are talking to talent agents and casting directors and things like that. So hopefully it's all moving ahead. I anticipate that it will be someone unknown who will be playing Ava. There are all kinds of reasons for that. Some of them economic, I think. Another is if it's someone who is just starting out in the business or has just started out in business. You can tie them up for multiple years because the intent is to do multiple years because there's 13 books. So hopefully we can get 7 or 8 years out of them. The thing that I said to the producers, though, was that an unknown, but I really want someone who's Chinese-Canadian. And I want her sexual orientation never to be changed. And I want her family structure, which is quite complicated, to be kept intact. As long as those things are done, when it comes to the rest of the plots, I don't care. So that, those are the questions I was asked and I've answered. I hope I haven't stumbled and mumbled too much, and you got something out of this. Anyway, thank you for looking in on me. Goodbye.